September 30th, 2009. Carl Galliana owns 2 Saturn dealerships outside Detroit, and this is supposed to be the week his brand gets saved. The sale of Saturn to Roger Penske is set to close within days. As Galliana put it, "Everyone's been saying we're right at the goal line." That evening after the markets close, the announcement comes. The deal is dead. Not because of GM, because of a board vote in Paris. Here's what was sitting on the table that week. 350 dealerships, 13,000 jobs, and the most loyal customer base any American car company had built in 50 years. People who drove their Saturns past 300,000 miles and then wrote letters about them. Roger Penske, one of the most respected operators in the business, had agreed to buy all of it. The deal had been public since June. Dealers had spent the summer preparing for a future. So the question this video answers is a strange one. Why did an American billionaire need a French automaker's permission to save an American car brand? The answer is the part of the Saturn story almost nobody tells, and it starts with what GM did to Saturn long before 2009. In January 1985, GM incorporated Saturn as something it had never built before, a separate company with its own factory, its own engineering, its own dealer network, and its own labor agreement. The investment ran to $5 billion. The factory went up in Spring Hill, Tennessee, a town of about 1,000 people, deliberately far from Detroit. The first car rolled off the line on July 30th, 1990, and it worked. The cars had polymer body panels you couldn't dent. Dealers would invite customers to kick the doors. The price on the sticker was the price you paid, no haggling, at a time when Americans ranked car shopping somewhere below a dentist visit. Sales went from 48,000 cars in the first year to more than 280,000 by 1994. J.D. Power had Saturn's sales satisfaction scores beating Lexus. In June of '94, Saturn invited its owners to visit the factory, and 44,000 owners and their families drove to rural Tennessee, some from Alaska, to eat barbecue on the lawn of an assembly plant. Saturn officials said the company had posted its first operating profit in 1993. That was the high water mark. What happened next wasn't a market failure, it was a budget decision. Time magazine reported that Saturn's $5 billion build-out had, quote, drained $5 billion from other car projects and stirred anger and envy within GM ranks. Chevrolet dealers resented losing small car buyers to it. Division executives resented the money. And in 1994, the resentment had a number attached. Spring Hill workers took home bonuses of $3,245 under their performance agreement, while the rest of GM's hourly workforce got $550. So when Saturn needed what every car company needs, a second generation, GM said no. The S-Series launched in 1990 and was still the showroom car in 2002, 12 model years on one platform. In that same window, Honda redesigned the Civic twice. Toyota refreshed the Corolla 3 times. Saturn's customers kept walking into dealerships they loved and finding the same car, slightly older. Sales didn't collapse because people stopped liking Saturn. They collapsed because GM gave those people nothing new to buy. Then GM took the rest. In 2004, the UAW and GM dissolved the labor agreement that had made Spring Hill different. The partnership model went back into the standard corporate structure. The replacement products weren't Saturns in any meaningful sense. They were rebadged GM and Opel platforms. The same cars you could buy down the street wearing a Chevrolet badge, often for less. By 2007, Saturn production had left Spring Hill entirely. The company that was founded to be a different kind of car company had been made deliberately, line item by line item, the same. Which brings us back to Penske and to why the rescue was built on a fault line. When GM filed the largest industrial bankruptcy in American history in June 2009, it sorted its brands into 2 piles. Pontiac got a death sentence, phased out, but Saturn went in the other pile, for sale. And Penske's offer wasn't really for a car company, because by then Saturn didn't make anything. No factory, no platforms of its own. Penske was buying a dealer network and a reputation. GM agreed to keep supplying 3 models, but only into 2011. After that, Penske had to find someone else to actually build the cars. That someone was Renault. Through the summer of 2009, Penske's team negotiated a manufacturing agreement with the French automaker. By the end of September, every other piece was in place. The dealers had signed, the announcement was drafted, GM expected to close within the week. The manufacturing agreement went to Renault's executive board for approval. The board said no. Renault's spokeswoman put it in one line: "The conditions for an agreement have not been found." Penske's statement was just as blunt: without a future supply of vehicles, the risks prohibited moving forward. There was no termination fee, there was no second bidder. GM's own spokesman called it a stunning turn of events. Within hours, GM announced the wind down of Saturn, its 350 dealerships, and the 13,000 jobs the deal would have carried. The dealers' contingency wind-down agreements, the funeral paperwork, were already on file. They'd been signed as a precaution while everyone waited on Paris. The cost wasn't abstract. A technician who worked at a Saturn dealership from 1991 to 2001 described rebuilding transaxles for a week in the early years, staying through every growing pain, and quitting the day GM forced the brand onto a shared global platform. In his words, just when Saturn had finally ironed out its worst failures, it was downhill from there. A man who grew up next to the plant watched Spring Hill turn from farmland into a boomtown and then into something quieter. The plant still runs today. It builds Cadillacs now. As he put it, it's just another job. There's one artifact left. On the edge of the plant property in Spring Hill, there's an old grain silo that workers painted for the homecoming back when 44,000 people drove across the country to visit a car factory. The paint is still there. GM spent $5 billion building the most loved car company in America. Then it spent 15 years making sure it didn't stay one. And when a buyer finally offered to take Saturn off its hands, there was nothing left under the badge for him to buy. The starvation was the murder weapon. Paris just declined to interfere. This is the business story the news coverage missed.